Greetings all. Now all of us are famous with this great writer and poet Edgar Allan Poe. Now this video is going to talk about how Edgar Allan Poe has written the poem Raven in accordance to what he has told to us in his essay The Philosophy of Composition. Let's get right on into it. Now, Edgar Allan Poe, he was born on January 19, 1809, and he was the second child of English-born actress Elizabeth Arnold Hopkins Poe and actor David Poe. Now, it's safe to say that he did grow around all those artificiality or the acting things and all. Now, he was an author, poet, editor, and a literary critic. He is regarded as a central figure of Romanticism, and he is considered the inventor of the detective fiction genre. Now, it was after Edgar Allan Poe that even Sir Arthur Conan Doyle brought out Sherlock Holmes, or Agatha Christie who brought out Hercule Poirot and many other detectives. So it was Edgar Allan Poe who started this grim and gothic, eerie fiction, and safe to say he also took it to poetry. Even his poems are grim, and one such example is Raven. Now, not just Raven, Poe has written tons of beautiful works, and his alma mater is University of Virginia. He actually dropped out, and then he went on to the military academy, where again he was expelled. He worked for literary journals and periodicals, and he produced his own journal, The Pen, which was later renamed to be The Styles. So on October 7, 1849, at the age of 40, Poe died in Baltimore. So this is the life of Poe. Now, the works that he's written, so these are his famous poetry: Annabel Lee, A Dream Within a Dream, The Haunted Place, The Raven, which we are going to discuss more on, and Tales, The Black Cat, which is very famous, The Gold Bug, and The Telltale Heart. He's written many more tales, but these three are like the topmost of it. And prose, The Philosophy of Composition, Eureka, a prose poem, and The Poetic Principle. So when we come to this philosophy of composition, which we are going to focus on in this video, this was written in the year 1846. And this appeared in Graham's magazine. So this was the modus operandi for the Raven. So this, based on whatever facts or whatever ideas he's given on the philosophy of composition, he wrote the poem Raven, which is very interesting and gothic poem. The poem design, step by step manner of precision. The poem is designed step by step. Every single thing, every single line, every single word is carefully and artistically placed there. And actually, it is just the opposite to the romantic theory of writing poetry. The romantic theory of writing poetry suggests that poem is nothing but a spontaneous overflow of emotions. If you see any romantic writer, this is what they propose and this is what they've done. But then this philosophy of composition goes against all that romantic theory. It says, according to Poe, poetry is something which you sit carefully, think methodically, and then you write it. So it is not a spontaneous overflow, rather than a carefully calculated work of art. So this particular, he said, whatever poetry writing, it has to suit the popular and critical taste. It is not just what I like to tell, it is more through like, am I justifying, am I giving people what they need, what they want? Am I keeping up with the trend? And so first off, you have to create the desired effect. Anything, the background has to be set. And see, the denouement, which is the climax, the finale, should be elaborated. So whatever you do, it has to lead on to that. And the effect should be susceptible to the soul, heart, and intellect. See, more often when you take up works of romantic writers, romantic works, it's more to the soul and the heart rather than to the intellect. But here, Poe says, all your soul, heart, intellect, all three should be able to believe in it. okay, should be able to feel that. So obviously, so the effect, how can you create that effect? So you have to have an incident and you have to set a tone, so ultimately you will get the effect. So in this particular poem, the raven, sorry, you see the death of the lover is the incident, so the lover has died, and the tone is melancholic tone, okay, a sad tone. So together we get the entire poem in its beautiful effect. So he says in Philosophy of Composition, it is only with the denouement constantly in view that we can give plot its indispensable air of consequence, or causation, by making the incidents and especially the tone at all points tend to the development of the intention. So the thing is, you have to first decide on the climax, the finale, and then you have to carefully curate, write the incidents that lead to that. It's not like you write it and eventually you meet at the finale. No, you decide on the finale, and then depending upon that you build the rest of the work. Okay, so that's what he suggests in the Philosophy of Composition, and it's pretty obvious from here. So probably Poe would have thought about the ending before writing about this starting in the poem The Raven. Okay, so now when we come to the length of the poem, it has to be brief, brevity. That's one thing he stresses on, and it has to be brief in the sense, not 2 lines or 1 paragraph. It has to be, you have to be able to read it in one sitting. Poem should not be very lengthy, and the thing is, the totality will be destroyed if it's too long. Poem is all about the effect, the emotion that you put into it. Now if you read like five stanzas now, and later on come to the next stanza a day later or even an hour later, the effect will be lost. So he, according to him, the suitable length is 100 lines. And if you take Raven, it actually has 8 extra lines, 108 lines. So in this particular part, we can see he did not he has violated his own rule, but then it's just 8 lines of violation, so it's not too much. And again, the poem is written in a way that you can read it in one sitting. So the brevity part, he has held on to it, though he has violated a little bit. Now when we come to the refrain, see, the one peculiar thing or beautiful thing about Raven is its refrain. No one can say against no for that. So beauty is the main province here, and this is created by the unity of effect. So even in the refrain, he prevails, the effect pertains. Now see, so unity in effect, how can you achieve? You can achieve it through a refrain. Okay, every second, and at the end of every stanza, you have the word nevermore. Okay, and the refrain is the pivot point, the turning point on which the whole structure turns. Every time you hear the word nevermore in the poem, you immediately brought to the melancholic eerie state. And recurrence with variation in function. Every time the Raven says nevermore, it is a reply to a different question. It's not giving the answer nevermore to the same question again and again. To different questions, it's giving the same answer, but in a way, it is still relevant. It makes sense. And another thing, why he chose the word nevermore, it's because of that sonorous sounds that the O and R produce, which again aids to the eerie effect, the gothic effect. And the speaker of this is a nonsensical bird, raven. Birds don't talk, and especially ravens don't talk, and ravens again associated with dark, evil things. So making such a word, a nonsensical bird, say a word like nevermore, just adds on to the effect. Now, death again, universally accepted and melancholic. Death is something that all over the world, which makes people sad. Okay, so this is universally accepted thing, and it creates sadness. And beauty, obviously, when you think of beauty, beautiful woman comes to the mind. So, and bereaved lover is created. So you see death, beauty, and bereaved lover, obviously. Okay, so death of a beautiful girl. And now, so when you talk about the originality of the poem, he says he has to use rhyme and alliteration. Now I've given an example from the poem here. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary. So dreary and weary are rhyming, and weak and weary are alliteration. It's an alliteration. So it is aided by other unusual and some altogether novel effects. This is just an example. The poem is filled with such literary devices, and the locale of the poem. So in his essay, he says, a close circumcision of space is absolutely necessary to the effect of insulated incident. So a close circumscription of a space here is the chamber room where the entire thing takes place, and the chamber room is sacred because it holds the memory of the bereaved lover. It holds her memory, so it is sacred. And it is not just sacred, but it's also richly furnished. So it's a very beautiful but a sad place, and a very sacred as well. So it says, and the silken, sad, uncertain rustling of each purple curtain thrilled me. Purple in itself is a symbolic of royalty, right? So, so you can see how rich the place is, but at the same time it is sad. And the night, he says, is a tempestuous night. Why? To account for the raven seeking permission. See, if the raven wants to come in, it has to get something must have come up, right? That's why it wants to come inside the house. If not, ravens happily stay outside, flying out and all. Also, the tempestuous night contrasts with the serenity within the chamber. So within the chamber there is peace, sadness. But outside the chamber, outside, the night is tempestuous. There's chaos, there's madness. So to contrast these two, this is contrasted by a wall. The bird alight on the bust of Pallas. Again, the contrast between marble and plumage. See, bust of Pallas is white. The raven is black. See how contrasting he's keeping it. And symbolically, the bust of Pallas is also tells us about the scholarship of the lover, how how much of a learned person he is. Again, because of the sonorousness that the Pallas word begins. You see, there is sound prolongs. And so in the poem he says, perched upon the bust of Pallas just above my chamber door. This is how it goes in the poem. Now, the main theme of the poem, when you talk about that, it is fully planned. So as we saw in the earlier slide, he says, you have to first decide on the denouement. The ending, the finale has to be decided. Only then you can go ahead. So obviously the theme is fully planned. So the thing is, a bereaved lover is mourning his dead beloved. A very simple thing, but the way he has written it is that is where the beauty lies. And this bereaved lover encounters a raven, and the raven keeps on saying nevermore, nevermore, nevermore. And this seems to be an answer to all the questions that he's putting forth. And it also says the lover's urge for self-torture. He could have very readily moved on, but he is the person, a word that's saying something. It need not even be nevermore, but the bereaved lover wants to be tortured. That's why he thinks that it is saying nevermore. Okay, and he assumes that is the answer to his questions, and that just increases his sadness. So the desired effect is brought in by the word nevermore. So when you talk about the narrative technique, it's a very simple narration. Anyone can understand the poem. And the beginning, so you have beginning, middle and the end. The beginning you have the lover mourning, middle strange encounter with the raven, and the end his soul sinks deep. He becomes even more sadder. Okay, so this, having a structure, having a very legit, believable process, it makes a poem even more credible. That's why we feel even more sad. We feel with the bereaved lover. Now, portrayal of the raven as in the essay. If you take up the essay, he says, two things are invariably required. First, some amount of complexity or more properly adaptation, and secondly, some amount of suggestiveness. So, suggestiveness, you can see it through the line, take thy beak from out my heart and take thy form off my door. quoth the raven, nevermore. So you see, it's not that the raven literally has its beak inside the bereaved lover's heart. He just says, the suggestiveness. And raven, it in itself symbolizes, stands as mournful and never-ending remembrance. The raven itself is a remembrance of the bereaved lover. And so when you talk about the criticism, the critic Maurice Ravel says, "I'm convinced that Poe indeed wrote this poem, The Raven, in the way he indicated." So he says that Poe has justified his philosophy of composition through the poem The Raven. And Edgar Allan Poe has constructed the poem Raven as he has discussed in the philosophy of composition, which he just saw. So whatever he saw and suggested in the philosophy of composition, he has made it happen in the poem Raven. Usually when people say do this or do that, they themselves will not follow it. So Edgar Allan Poe, he has written an essay on how to write poetry, and he himself has followed every single step of it, and ultimately we have the poem The Raven, the best and a very beautiful poem. So with that, this comes to an end. Thank you.